Welcome back. There is a live look outside from the Oregon coast. Our in at Spanish Head Resort Hotel camera in Lincoln City. Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. Okay, can plants see? Can they hear? Can they learn? Our next guest answers these questions and more in her new book while she explores the possibility of intelligence and consciousness in plants. We welcome the author of The Light Eaters, Zoe Schlanger. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Tell me about the journey of writing this book. You've been working on it for a long time, and you kind of traveled the world a bit too.
I did. I got very lucky. Botanists work in some of the most beautiful places on Earth.
Yeah.
So I got to go to Hawaii. I went to the cold rainforests of southern Chile. I went to, exotic Wisconsin. There is amazing plant science being done all over the world.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So your kind of beat that you write normally is climate change and climate
right.
science. How did you zero in on plant life as this study to kind of take over your life for a few years?
I was covering climate change for something like 7 years and starting to feel a bit burnt out. I'm sure any of your viewers could imagine relating to this.
Yeah.
It's relentless bad news. And I was looking for something else to cover to sort of refresh myself, something more alive and wondrous. And I started paying attention to what was happening in the plant sciences. And incredibly to me, what was happening is that botanists were debating whether or not plants might be intelligent. And from a science reporter's perspective, when you see scientists using such words like that, scientists are very conservative people for good reason. They want to make sure that their facts are right. But they were debating this very squishy issue of intelligence and consciousness in plants. And so I knew that was kind of the story of my lifetime.
Okay.
And just dove all in.
Perfect timing. And tell me about the title, The Light Eaters.
Yeah.
I love that. Tell me more about what that means.
So The Light Eaters comes from a quote by an ethnobotanist named Timothy Plowman. And he, the idea of plant intelligence has been a debate for a few years, and he was kind of like not having it. He didn't want to deal with that debate. And he was saying, plants can eat light. Isn't that enough? And I, in some ways, agree with him.
Right.
It's still the coolest thing plants can do. They photosynthesize. We all learn about photosynthesis sometime in middle school, but I don't think anyone fully internalizes how amazing it is that they spin every molecule of sugar that we've ever ingested out of thin air. They're the only things that can make sugar out of elements that aren't living.
Yeah.
Water, air, and sunlight. And every fiber of our being and every single molecule that powers our brain is this plant sugar. And without that sugar that they make by eating the light, we wouldn't be here.
It's all connected. Your brain could just kind of explode sometimes when you start digging into
It's
the
true.
details. Let's talk about some of these myths that we've all heard about plants before that have been debunked, but I think that they're still out there, like the thing about classical music. Do you still hear people talk about that and playing music for their plants at home?
I absolutely do. I get asked about this. Do plants prefer rock and roll or classical music? This is a notion that came out of a book in the 70s that many people might remember called The Secret Life of Plants.
Right.
This was a wildly popular book. There was a feature film, and Stevie Wonder wrote an album for the film. And it's a great album, I have to say. But that was a kind of beautiful collection of mostly myths. It was kind of pseudoscience. There was things that couldn't be replicated. And the plants enjoying music is one of them. So plants didn't evolve alongside music. It doesn't really make sense for them to care about music. But we do know now that plants do have a relationship to sound. They are receiving sound as vibration, which is fundamentally a physical stimulus. And they're using sound information to make choices about their lives.
Right.
Yeah.
So we were talking about kind of the debate over intelligence versus consciousness, but you've kind of found through your studies and travels that plants have agency and that ability to make a choice. Can you tell me more examples of kind of witnessing plants push themselves forward in existence like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I like the word agency because it doesn't layer as many of our human concepts of intelligence and consciousness on them. Agency is just the act of being in charge of your own life. Having a say in how your life goes. And plants are constantly making decisions to further their own survival. I love thinking about the ways plants communicate using airborne chemicals. They also do amazing things. They cross the species divide. They communicate with insects all the time. They often summon insects to do their bidding.
That's crazy. That's so wild. Like if something is munching on a plant, they'll summon, I guess, a predator insect to come get rid of whoever's bugging them in the first place.
Sounds like you read the book. Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so corn and cotton and tomatoes have all been found to sample the saliva that caterpillars leave behind, and through that identify what species of caterpillar it is, and then exude a chemical, a pheromone in a way, that lures the predator wasps that predate that specific type of caterpillar. So the wasp comes, injects its eggs inside the caterpillar bodies. The eggs hatch, and the little larva wasps eat the caterpillar from the outside.
Incredible. I mean,
and then that's how the plant tries to save itself.
There's just so much happening, and there's also something so interesting about plants recognizing sibling plants and allowing space for them to grow. But if they're growing next to someone that's not related to them, I guess, they're like, no, get out of here. I need to take up this space.
Yes, kin recognition in plants is still a field in flux. It's all very new, and there's a lot we don't know. But what researchers are finding, some species of plants can sense whether they're planted beside their genetic kin. And failcress, for example, will rearrange its leaves within 2 days to avoid shading its sibling if it suddenly finds itself next to its sibling. Related sunflower plants will grow at angles to avoid shading each other, whereas oftentimes the classical thinking goes is that plants are out to compete as much as possible to shade each other out and dominate sunlight.
It's just incredible, and it goes on and on and on in so many different species. I mean, how did you kind of organize it all in the book and find a way to lay it all out? Because it's very overwhelming, but it's so interesting. I think even if you don't think you're super interested in plants, the science is pretty mind-blowing. I'm
so glad you feel that way. I do. I feel that way too. I had my mind blown every stage in this process. And I really organized it around senses we think of for ourselves, like hearing, like touch. Plants do perceive touch. They treat it as something to ramp up their immune systems about if they get touched too much. There's a whole world of people debating whether or not plants have vision. But then they also have these senses that are so beyond our own. I mean, they can synthesize complex chemical compounds that can do so many different things, and they can also sense chemicals in the air in a way that if we could do that, that would be incredibly astounding. Our world would look much different.
That'd be great.
It would be, or would it be?
We'll start with the plants. Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
for
having
This was so fun.
me.
We want to let everyone know that Zoe has a book event tonight at Powell's on West Burnside. It's at 7 p.m. and we'll have all the details for you on our website. The book again is The Light Eaters, and we'll have more information on KATU.com.